When I went to the White House, I had never been a deputy assistant to the president or a senior advisor to nobody's vice president. I never worked at the White House. I didn't even know anybody. My first day at the White House was my first time in the actual White House.
Hi, I'm Sally Christensen, the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand. And this is Work Friends, a podcast for those who take their work, but not always themselves, seriously.
Work Friends.
My guest today knows a lot about speaking truth to power. In fact, she wrote a book about it. Symone Sanders-Townsend came to prominence as the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign before joining President Joe Biden's campaign as a senior advisor in 2020 and eventually becoming the chief spokesperson and senior advisor for Vice President Kamala Harris. That same year, she published a memoir, No, You Shut Up, Speaking Truth to Power and Reclaiming America. In 2021, she left to pursue a full-time career in media and is now the host of MSNBC's The Weekend. I'm so excited to have Symone join us to hear more about her career thus far, navigating the world of politics and finding success through the power of her own voice. Please join me in welcoming Symone Sanders-Townsend to Work Friends. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Greetings. I'm happy to be here.
We're just going to dive right in with some icebreakers.
Okay.
Professional pet peeve?
Meetings that should have been an email. Not could have been. Definitely should have been an email.
The quickness with which you came with that.
Honestly, literally.
I've got like a long list of...
What are yours?
I've got...
Give me your top two.
Too many to name. I certainly dislike when people are passive aggressive over email. For example, I responded to an email. I just want to remind everyone, I'm the founder of a company. I have 1 billion emails in my inbox. The guy was like, well, I don't know about a 2-month response time on an email, but I guess we could meet. And I was like, delete forever.
Oh, we won't be meeting.
Yeah, that's like an extreme version, but that's one.
I guess on the emails, I want people to be direct. I'm a per my last email kind of girl.
Yeah, like, direct.
Per my last email.
But that's the beauty of you too, though, is you are direct.
Sometimes to my detriment, I think.
I don't think so. In a work setting, I think your superpower, though, is like, and honestly, personally, I feel like you come with like directness in a way that's disarming and gets people to reveal more.
Oh, good. I mean, it really works very well for an interview because by the time people get to chit chat and it's like, you've said all these things you didn't even know you were supposed to say on television.
Yes. And we're live. Let's talk about your career. You studied, we'll do a live fact check on our research. You studied business in undergrad?
Okay. I was a business management major.
Uh-huh.
And because those were the credits I had. I'm not even joking. So when I first came into college, I was actually, I was in a 3-3 program. I went to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, a Jesuit Catholic institution, very lovely. Go Blue Jays. And I wanted to be a judge. Since I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a judge. I said I either wanted to be a chef or a judge. And the chef is funny because I don't cook well. So I don't cook because I don't necessarily cook well. And my husband cooks very well. So there's literally no reason for me to cook. So the chef thing, I think I identified earlier, wasn't for me. 10 years old, the folks come in your class and they're like, if you could have anybody you want for a mentor, Sally is crying, y'all. She's crying. Literally, this happened to me in my grade school. They came into my class, and this matters for the question you asked.
Yes.
They came into my class, and they asked us, I was 10 years old. They said, write down, if you could have any mentor that you wanted, write it down. Write down who that would be. And you know me, I'm like, yes, Symone. I'm like, anyone? They're like, anybody. So I wrote down a chef and a judge. They could not find a chef, but they found me a judge, 2 judges. So 2 federal district court judges were my mentors in my 7th and 8th grade year of middle school. And I kept in touch with them all the way through high school when I got to college. And so I wanted to be a judge. Well, in order to be a judge, you got to be a lawyer first. Mm-hmm. And to be a lawyer, you need to go to law school. Mm-hmm. So I caught myself trying to go into the 3-3 program. 3 years of undergrad, your 4th year, instead of being your senior year, would be your first year of law school. And in 6 years, you would graduate with your law degree and an MBA all together. And obviously your undergrad. So I'm like, I'm doing this. And then calculus hit. And I'm like, why do I need this to be a lawyer? So I got out of the 3-3 program. It wasn't for me.
Do you need that to be a lawyer?
You needed it to be in the 3-3 program.
I got it. Yeah, for your MBA. So that's the MBA side of the house.
I guess it was. Uh-huh. I took a sociology class that semester as well, and I fell in love with it. So I come home telling my father I want to be a sociologist. He was like, those people do not make money. I'll never forget this. And I said, I'm very passionate about sociology. I think I want to be a sociology major with a minor in criminal justice policy. This was so specific. And shout out to the teachers, okay? The teachers were having me like, yes, this is what I can do for a living. This is my career. Well, I never officially changed my major, but I took all these classes that said sociology, but I still came in and I was in the business school. I'll never forget Sharice Williams, who still is at the university to this day in the business college. She's the assistant dean. Sharice was my advisor. So I'm telling Sharice how I found my passion. I'm going to be a sociology with a minor in criminal justice policy. And she's like, are you challenging yourself? And I said, what do you mean, Sharice? She was like, are you learning about anything you don't think you already know? And I said, no, that's why I like it. She said, if I may, I think that you should stay in the business school. And I said, well, Sharice, I just really don't know if this is for me. And I wanted to make sure I graduate. Someone pays a lot of money for me to go here and I don't got it. So they're going to be looking for their return on their investment soon. And Sharice convinced me to stay in the business college. She said, you know, the sociology stuff, the political, the criminal justice reform, this is all stuff you already do already. How about you get this other skill set from these classes and you can still go out and pursue all the internships you want. So I did a lot of political internships, but I also interned at a law firm, which is how I knew I didn't want to be a judge. I bait stamped. I was like, oh, I like to go to court and be places with windows. Okay, those are the partners. Okay.
Got to earn your stripes.
Got to earn your stripes up there. So I can only imagine.
Where did all this ambition come from? I find it remarkable. I feel like, so for me, I grew up in South Carolina on a farm and was basically told, and not by my parents, but by society, I feel like, where it's like you could be a mom or maybe a doctor or a lawyer or a banker. I don't think I really understood what career could look like. That really is one of the reasons that Argent exists. Representation, right?
Really? Yes.
Yes, because I want to give the next generation an idea of what your career can look like. I feel like you were already dreaming it up by the age of 10 and probably before that. But that's that standout, I feel like, for our generation and in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yes. You know, I like to say, I feel like it's a combination of my family, my mother, my father, but also our community. Omaha, Nebraska, I feel like it's a town. It's a small town. I know people are like, Nebraska, there are Black people in Nebraska. There are Black people all over this country, except maybe not North Dakota, but I don't know. Everywhere else, though.
I'm happy, unbiased point of view. Love Omaha, Nebraska.
See?
I've been there.
See?
Yeah.
See? Old Market.
It's
okay.
great.
Have you been to the zoo?
I've been downtown. I've been to the zoo. There's a slide
it's
in
the
the
best zoo in the
area.
country.
Everything about,
it truly is. It rivals the San Diego Zoo. Now, we never had pandas. That's the thing.
I think Cincinnati, too, has a zoo that people
Cincinnati
like to talk
Zoo
about.
is never as good as the Omaha Henry Dorley Zoo. And this is not an ad.
What's the baseball? You get the World Series?
Yes, the College World Series is
in
there.
Omaha.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Warren Buffett,
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Hughes, Gabrielle Union is also from Omaha. Every
did
time I
not
see her,
know
I'm
that.
like, yes, Nebraska girls, stand up.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's one of those cities that I feel like people don't know enough about. And then when you go, you're like, oh, okay, this is a time.
This is a time. And it's a town. And the community is close-knit. My mom I told you she was a serial entrepreneur, very involved in the community. And my sister and I have a sister, we're 23 months apart. We would always be with my mother. My mother owned her own business and she worked from home. And so after school, she would pick us up and we would go with her. Whether that was a meeting, a fitting. She was a seamstress for 16 years. Lots of people were coming to our house. The living room or the sitting room area was her office. We had a curtain that she would pull. And when the clients were here, it was so great. So I learned about being engaged and involved from her. And while my parents were not, my father was a chemical engineer at the Army Corps of Engineers. He tested the water. Okay. I'll tell you about tap water later, Sally. We'll chat.
I grew up drinking straight from the tap.
Well water.
Hardyville, South Carolina, well water tasted like sulfur. So I don't know if I wanted to go there.
That's why the Biden administration tried to do something about this lead, honey. I'm like, somebody got to do something about the lead in this water that people are drinking. But my community, I think, is what exposed me to a lot of these different things. And I'm a Girls Inc. girl. I know you're familiar. Are you familiar with Girls Inc.?
Yes, but no.
It's a nonprofit organization, services girls 6 to 18, after school and summer programming. And Girls Inc. is how I got introduced to the political process. Girls Inc. is where I learned about media literacy. I wrote and edited and produced my own PSA. It was the first time I did that. We won an award. That is, Girls Inc. is where I honed a lot of the skills. Girls Inc. is where I learned to be a public speaker. It was just a really formative experience for me. And my first DC internship was in Girls Inc.'s National Public Policy Office. So the community that I came from and my parents were really instrumental in making sure that I knew that the world was that my vantage point, my world could be as big as I wanted it to be. I thought that was helpful. You know, my mom said, I don't know when it happened, but I used to pretend to be a newscaster. My name was Donna Burns. I don't know who Donna was or who she reported for, but I would like pick up a spoon or whatever. And it's Donna Burns reporting live. And I don't know why, but
it's incredible.
Now I don't have to pretend to be Donna Burns. I get to be Symone Sanders-Townsend.
Yes. A similar upbringing, though, where my parents were like, you can be anything. I feel like they raised us with that mindset, which is so important. I mean, I feel like from a young age to just be instilled with there is no ceiling.
Yes,
you know?
It's critical because you're from a farm in South Carolina, and I know South Carolina well, okay? I know people I live in DC now. I know young people who live literally maybe 15 minutes from the United States Capitol, from the monuments, from the White House, who don't know they live 15 minutes from the United States Capitol, from the Washington Monument or the White House, right? And so what we tell young people and what was told to us, it matters. I volunteered at Girls Inc. after I graduated, and I'll never forget. We go into one of the classrooms with the girls are always broken up by age. We were doing some kind of project where they had to go on they had to imagine a day, you know, their best day ever. And we told them money was not an option and you could go anywhere and do anything you wanted. And these girls were raising their hands with some very amazing things. Somebody's like, I want to go Dubai. I was like, I ain't never been to Dubai. I need to put this on my list. This girl is 8 and she got goals. And this one young lady raised her hand and she said, I would like to go to Kansas City and go shopping. And we were like, no, you can go anywhere in the world you want to go, do anything you want to do. And money is not an option. She said she wanted to go to Kansas City and go shopping. Now, what y'all don't know is in Omaha, you do go to Kansas City to go shopping because that's where the better stores are. Okay. We just rolled down the road to Kansas City. But this young lady's world was only as big as going to Kansas City and going shopping. And I think young people across the country, children, especially young girls, they deserve to know that their world can be as big as they want it to be. Now, it's going to take some work. Some people are not going to want you to have the things you say you want to have. They will try to deny you the things that you have worked for. But the world can be as big as we want it to be. And like, I think I took that to heart. I've tried to live that.
I think you do live that. So, I'm curious to know because you've had such success from a young age, do you ever experience or have you experienced, and can you talk about a time you've had imposter syndrome?
Oh my God, all the time. Not now as much. But when I first, I think that I was always the youngest person in the room in
probably
all
still.
of the rooms still. Yeah. I mean, I'm 34. So
yeah.
I'm oftentimes the youngest person in the room. And oftentimes I was also the most melanated. Okay. And so think about being a young melanated woman.
Yes.
Who has a position of seemingly authority, yes. But people are telling you, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And so when I went to go work on the Sanders campaign, I just will never forget. I will never forget. I had a boss that told me on my first day, you know, if BET or Telemundo calls, you can take those. But if the Washington Post, New York Times, or CNN calls, or NBC, you need to route those to me. And it was an email that he sent me. And so I was like that Kermit meme, you know, typing on the typewriter. And then I deleted, and then I deleted, and then I finally settled on writing back. Thank you so much. But as the National Press Secretary, I think I am emboldened and have the right to speak to the national press, all of it. And there were many times, that was my first professional experience where I had to learn to back up my opinion with facts, but what I was saying with facts. And so I oftentimes speak with data and whatnot now because I got used to doing that in a work setting. So if I say something, someone's going to automatically say, that's not true. You don't know what you're talking about. That's why I'm such a good Googler. Okay. Because it is true. And it's not just me saying it. Pew Center, this report, the New York Times, NBC, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm qualifying what I am saying. I'm backing up what I'm saying with data, with facts, with reports. So that when you're telling me that I'm wrong, you're not just telling me I'm wrong. You're telling me NBC News' entire department is wrong. And that is what I got in my head. And that helped me build my confidence at work because I got to a place where I'm like, I really know what I'm talking about because I do my research. There's one thing about me. I don't like to get up early, Sally, but I will. And get up early for the weekend.
You get up extra early.
I get up very early for the weekend.
Yeah.
But I will stay late and I will do the research. There are people that have more experience than me. And I learned that as being a young person coming up very quickly, there are people with more experience, with better connections, and no more people who are smarter than me. But what they won't do is outwork me. And that is how I've been able to navigate. But yeah, I think the imposter syndrome is real. When I went to the White House, I had never been a deputy assistant to the president or a senior advisor to nobody's vice president. I never worked at the White House. I didn't even know anybody. My first day at the White House was my first time in the actual White House. I literally, this is how you knew I was like one of the people that had never been there before. I go into the West Wing and I'm going up the stairs to go to the vice president's office in the West Wing. And I'm in the hallway like, wow, this is small. Looks big on TV. Girl, if you don't get your country self in that office and do your job. But yes, so it's like, but you know what? We got to show up and execute. I never hosted a TV show before, Sally.
But I think
I pretended to be Donna Burns.
What you touched on, which I think is really important to talk about, is what I've observed with women starting companies is that we're told the same thing repeatedly in terms of like what our limits are, what we can't do, and what we're wrong on. And so I've seen a lot of founders start companies or try and start companies, and then they'll be told like, oh, you're a creative, you need like a business partner, or you need this, or you need that. And you're like, well, no. Like, let's step back. It's such basic feedback and guidance and like redirection, but it's no business 101. You're crushing. Your numbers speak for themselves. You're having success. You don't let all of this conversation get in your way, because I think people are inclined to hold us back. I mean, they're intentionally doing it and unintentionally doing it. So I think that being your own advocate, having self-awareness, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, which I think is also important, but also being a little bit defiant and fighting back through your work.
You have to. Because you've done what you've done, you have now opened the door for so many other women-owned businesses. I mean, I saw the collab you did with Quiana, the bag folk.
Yeah.
Okay. And women business, women helping women. People see you and they're like, okay, I see Sally. This is obviously, okay, I can do it. Okay. I see Sally. I see the work she's putting in. I see all the things. Let me apply myself in that way. And I think that that's true for many other industries, especially when we see women in these spaces and places that we have not seen before, taking on very tall, hard tasks. I mean, I got to MSNBC because Rashida Jones, the president of the network, the first Black woman to lead a cable news network, she hired me. She told me to be my authentic self. And I strive every day to meet the mark, keep my job, and make my mama proud. But like Rashida Jones, I see Rashida going to work every single day. I worked for the first Black woman vice president of the United States of America. A job like in the White House, there's photos everywhere of everybody that used to be in charge. All the photos are of white men until you get to Barack Obama as the president, and then more white men until you get to the vice president. It took 49 vice presidents before we got a woman and a woman of color. So, and I every day watched her walk into rooms where people had never, seen anybody that looks like her before, and brought me and other folks into those rooms. So I just think that is, what is it? The 100 Black Men has a motto that says, what they see is what they'll be. And I think I've often heard the vice president talk about to see what can be unburdened by what has been. Yeah, it's like sometimes you have an example, but sometimes you don't. We are fortunate, I think, now that we have many more examples, but that doesn't mean it's any easier. We were joking before we came in about how we don't look like what we've been through this week. But, we do the work because if not us, then who?
Yes. And
some man that won't do it as well.
And I think that, and I've talked about this a lot, where it's like, it's shifting where we all are seeing how to lift each other up. And that's so important. And so it's like, how do we all stay in the workforce? How do we stay engaged? How do we continue to pull up other women?
Yeah, because there's room for everybody.
Correct.
And I think that's the difference in our generation and maybe the generation, the thought process before us. Like, that perhaps there's only, there's really only maybe room for one or two. I think that there's room for all of us.
100%.
There's a diversity of sentiment and especially when we talk about like women on TV. Do you know there are less than 5 Black women with their own shows on television?
No.
Yes.
But it's stats like that where I feel like people are constantly telling me that things
their
have
own
changed.
Cable shows. People are like, cable news shows, okay, people? Cable news shows.
Yeah, yes. But it's stats like that are like, there is still so much discrimination that we're up against. There's so much sexism, misogyny. Like there's a lot subtly baked in. And I think because we are aware of it and we're having a conversation around it, we're just starting that fight. You know, there's still a lot of progress we made, but I am hopeful because I think that we are shifting. We recognize how to do it together. I think there's a lot of power in that. I think that Gen Z is pushing and are values led, which is great. And I think their demographics are shifting. So I think that we're making progress, but I do think a lot still happens that is shocking to people.
Yeah, I just, people, what we are, in terms of the shift, what people are asking a conventional society to do is to rethink who they think belongs in various spaces and places.
Yeah.
And how they should look when they show up there.
Yes.
I can tell you how many emails, every time, every show, every weekend, every time I do a hit on television and my hand comes into view or I'm sitting down, I get a barrage of emails about how I really like what you said, but I think you'd be taken more seriously without your nails or the eyelashes or the bright lipstick. Okay, well, you know what? I had these nails when I got the president elected. I had these nails at the White House. I had these nails before I knew those folks. I had these nails when I got this show. The nails are not going anywhere, people. I want y'all to stop emailing me about the nails. Okay?
Yes.
Find something else.
There was I don't know, some local news station, and they had the female anchor wear the same thing every day, and they had the male anchor wear the same thing every day. Did you see this?
Yes, and they only talked about her.
Yes, and they
Nobody
only
said
noticed
anything about him.
Correct. So I think it's a losing battle. And I think when just leaning into your authentic self and understanding your own personal brand and what allows you to like show up being your best self is the thing to prioritize. And that's it. Like, I think
that's it. And do the work and be good at what you do.
Correct.
You know what I mean? People are not. Be good at what you do. When I worked for Senator Sanders, there was a time when early on, when I traveled, I would go places with them and I could not get in because I would arrive separately. There was no Secret Service, just pulling up in a Kia and pulling up in a rental car Kia. Okay. And I would get there. I go to the staff entrance. People would say, "This is the entrance for staff." I said, "I am staff." They would say, "No, this is senior staff." And I go back and forth to the people at the door. And regularly I would have to call somebody to come validate that I was who I said I was so they could get me in. One time this happened for a whole week to the point where I told the staff, I was like, "Look, I know y'all always tell them that I'm coming. Tomorrow, can you please tell them that I'm coming? This is the car that I'm driving and that I'm Black and bald because perhaps we need to start including these details because they don't believe." And the next day, same thing happened. And I ended up breaking down, like crying right before the senator and his wife, Jane, showed up. So I pulled it together because I was like, let me brief them. And as they walk into the room, I start briefing them. And Jane says, what's wrong, Symone? And I was like, I just break down. I tell the whole story. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And the senator stops to interrupt me. He said, and I'm telling him, I was like, I couldn't get in and da-da-da. I regularly can't get in. And he's like, well, why can't you get in? And Jane jumps in before I can say anything. She says, well, racism, Bernie. And I'm like, well, yes, Jane, and probably a little ageism and sexism too. And then the senator says something that I didn't think at the time was profound, but it was. He said, well, if you can't get in, who else is being locked out and kept out of the building that we don't know about? And I'm like, ooh. And so, yes, the isms are not going away, as Donna Brazile once told me, tomorrow. You have to call it out when you see it. We need to work to eradicate them, all the things. But you also have to be able to navigate through them. And the inability to navigate through the isms is what is going to keep the glass ceilings in place. We just going to keep looking up with cracks, okay, and just hoping one day, well, maybe it's going to break today. No. We must learn how to navigate through the isms so that, the Gen Zers and those after them, maybe there'll be a world where they have to deal with not even a fraction of what we had to deal with.
Yes, that's, this really stood out to me when I worked at Cisco prior to starting Argent. what I noticed, because I was involved in the women's group, is that
The ERG.
yes.
Come on, Employee Resource Group.
Yes, it's
I used
always
to work at a railroad. I worked everywhere.
It's the marginalized groups that are having to fight for their rights because you have a front row seat to all the bias. But what stood out to me is that college graduates would enter the workforce and they'd say, oh no, this isn't a problem for me. My male peers don't see gender. Like, we're all equal. So I heard that countless times.
When they first got there.
How'd
they feel 6 months in?
Exactly. So I think that what you're speaking to is how important awareness is, because once you're aware that, oh, you're going to miss that first promotion, but here's when it happens, and here's the amount that you need to hit, here's the title you need to hit to stay on track, because that's what it takes is awareness and information.
Yes.
And we've been cut off from having access to that because we don't get to golf and we don't get to have beer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what's critically important is that we raise awareness for women as they come in of all of the pitfalls that are ahead of them. Because if you go in and you're flying blind, like by the time you encounter that bias, it's too late.
Yes,
right?
and you're like, what is happening? Nobody told me. This goes back to what we talked about of helping one another. It is not just about people who are creating businesses, right? I mean, it is mentoring within any industry and making sure that you are seeking out mentors, sponsors, who are men and women alike, but that you are understanding the landscape. And for those of us who are, you know, at the top of what they're doing, ensuring that you are pulling people up and giving the information to other folks and not gatekeeping. Okay. I will gatekeep a good boutique, but I'm not going to gatekeep, you know, the career information.
Yes. And that's what is so refreshing about you, though, is I feel like you're comfortable in front of all audiences at all levels, to the point where there has to be reverse mentorship happening in your life, where you're raising awareness to probably a straight white man on what he's doing. And I think well-intentioned white men sometimes make decisions without the experience, the lived experience.
We all bring our own vantage points to the conversation. And the thing about being a woman, especially a woman of color, is you as women, we navigate. I would like to know what it's like to be a white man for the day, what it feels like to just navigate the world and not thinking about anybody else's vantage point except my own and what I think and how I show up in the world. As a woman, you do not have that is a luxury. You do not have the luxury to do that. As a person of color, you do not have the luxury to do that. There's a woman who is also a person of color. That is not a luxury that is afforded. You know, I used to do, in my former life, obviously I did communications work. And I can't tell you how many times that, you know, when it's time to do what is called constituency press, right? African-American outlets, Latino outlets, you know, when I would bring the list to these various folks, I'm like, these are the folks you have to do. I'll never forget, somebody looked on the list and said, well, why would so-and-so do an interview with Steve Harvey? Well, because Steve Harvey has one of the top syndicated radio shows in the country. Okay, but you wouldn't know that. But it would be unacceptable for me to walk into a room as a communications professional at the time and not know who was the top show on NPR, not know who had the top show on cable news, not know who was the top, like it is as a person of color, as a woman, as someone who is not, I guess, a straight white man. You always have to think about navigating the world differently from all these other vantage points and things that you need to know. And I think it behooves us all to remember that, again, everyone brings their own vantage point and perspectives to a conversation. And so I'm comfortable with who I am at this point, and I can show up authentically because I know that no one's going to come into the room and say what I'm going to say in the way that I'm going to say it. I'm bringing the entirety of my vantage point as a millennial Black woman from the Midwest who loves a fabulous shoe and a good nail and a lash, honey.
But that's that diversity of perspective, though, and we all know the data. It drives a better outcome, drives a better economic outcome, period. If we want to just talk about money, because that seems to be all we care about in this country, then just get women support and paid family leave and whatever tools necessary to keep them in the workforce, you know?
You know, it's so harrowing because there's a ruling on mifepristone that has yet to come out, which is the one of two drugs that is used to administer not just an abortion, medical abortions in this country, but also ectopic pregnancies. Like when someone has a miscarriage, a doctor might prescribe you mifepristone to pass the miscarriage. And they're talking about essentially, banning, making mifepristone illegal. And all of these things have to do about controlling women. Where are the laws about controlling the men in their bodies? None of them exist. And I'm just like, well, of course they don't. Because for a very long time, the people who were in charge of those things were not people that looked like you and I. They were men. They were men who didn't have a vantage point. And vantage points matter.
Yes. I do think that involving men in the solutions is really important because they do hold a lot of the power and they also have some ignorance around the issues because they're not lived experiences for them. And that's where your power lies, I feel like. And that's where change is going to happen.
Yeah, it's just going to take all of us.
It's going to take a lot of allies.
It's going to take all of us. Like, I think there's some people that are like, lock all the men away in a box and let us be in charge. And I'm like, no, I want some of the men. I want the men, okay?
Absolutely.
I just want everyone to... I want us to work in a collaborative way forward for what's best for the world.
Well, and this is all common sense to a lot of it too. And I think that's sort of similar to that scarcity mindset that women in the generation above us had, where it's a distraction to tearing down the patriarchy, right? So I'm going to focus on this other woman and getting that one seat, or I'm going to focus on reproductive rights because that's a conversation at hand, when it's unproductive and wasted energy, to be honest, because it's a very obvious, easy solution. But we're tied up in it, unfortunately, because we should just have access. So,
anyway,
honestly, that's another conversation for another day. I want to hear about an unhinged moment, if you're willing to share, in a career
Did I not just give you a couple?
That's true. That's fair.
I have an unhinged moment. I guess it's not unhinged, but where I was just at my wit's end and didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
When I worked for the vice president, I set up her media interviews. And once we set up a media interview with someone who hosts a popular radio show, but had a show on Comedy Central at the time. And so the vice president ended up doing this show on Comedy Central. And we chatted, we did the negotiations, we talked to, we worked with our the wider media director at the White House. And I was like, okay, great. We're going to do this, set it all up. The interview is supposed to be 7 to 10 minutes, I find out while the interview is happening, reporters are texting me saying that they were on the line. And I'm like, oh, well, this is a pre-recorded interview. I said, well, why are reporters listening on this interview? Kind of find out they had, the folks that they were doing the interview with sent out an invitation to, some constituency press so they could join the line, which is not something unusual, right? Well, it's unusual in this setting, but back in the day in Meet the Press, when Betsy Fisher-Martin, she was the EP of Meet the Press when Tim Russert was the host of Meet the Press. And Betsy pioneered the idea of when they had the big interviews, having the wires dial in and listen in on the line in the morning so that the wires could write up the interviews and the news would be everywhere. That was an idea that Betsy had and she pioneered. And so, yes, usually I understand getting people on the line to get additional coverage. That is not the same thing when it's just, an interview that we said we were doing with you and you were going to put on television. Somebody that hosts a TV show now, I'm very aware of how this works. So that happened in the interview. I'm like, okay, 7 minutes goes by. I give my signal like, oh, we need to wrap. This was virtual. So I'm texting, we need to wrap. 10 minutes goes by. I'm like, okay, we need to wrap. 7 to 10, like, I really need you to wrap. Can this be the last question? And I'm in a text message with the producers and the talent. I'm like, we really need to wrap. We gave 7 to 10. 15 minutes now goes by. Okay, 20 minutes now goes by. At this point, you got the Vice President of the United States of America sitting in a 7 to 10 minute interview for 20 minutes, and y'all are actively disrespecting my raps. And again, as an anchor of a show where I am regularly told to rap, okay, as one of the co-hosts, just ignoring the rap is a decision. Let me tell you, ignoring the sign to rap is a decision. 25 minutes are now going by, Solly. And I see the VP look down at me like, okay. And at that point, I had to make a decision. It's either going to be them or me. And I chose myself. And so you want to ignore my raps? There was a pause in the conversation. She answered her question and then stopped. I said, hey, excuse me. Hey, it's Symone. It's Symone, because I'm off on the side. So now I'm yelling. And I'm like, and I see them continuing to try to ask her another question. Then I put my body in front of the camera, in front of the Vice President of the United States of America, on the desk, honey. And, the Vice President, the lady used to be she used to be a United States Senator, obviously, the Attorney General of California. She's seen a lot. So Me and my antics laying my body across the desk. I guess that was just another Thursday for her. But I was just like, excuse me. Do you hear me? We need to rap. It has been, no, don't act like we need to rap.
Did it wrap immediately?
No, because they're like, oh, you don't want her to answer the questions. So she didn't hear my question. You don't want her to answer the hard questions. So obviously then the vice president says, oh, I can answer the question. I heard you. She answers the question, gives a good answer. They ask one more and then they wrap. They aired the interview with my interruption of me putting my body in the middle and no mention of the fact that they interview was 7 to 10 minutes. Okay. But you know what? When we got up to walk out, I looked at the vice president and she said, okay, what's next? Okay, good. Because I had to make a decision, honey. Put that body in front of that camera. Don't let that lady be out there for 30 goddamn minutes. Part of my language. So that was an unhinged moment. I've never done that before. I would not want anybody throwing their body. I would not want any staffers throwing their body in front of my cameras. If we had an interview on the weekend, but also we would not ignore a rap. Okay, we would not keep a principal for 30 minutes without permission. Okay?
That's the stress, though, that you hold in those behind the scenes roles that you've been at. You know, like, I feel like the principal has an army of people around them to absorb the stress of those situations.
It was me, honey. Me and my iPad and my phone. I was like, crazy. And then they aired it with my whole body on the table. And I'm like, I look a mess.
This I'm genuinely curious about. So you've had a number of high-profile career changes. From Senator Sanders' campaign in 2016 to President Biden's campaign, which led to your role with Vice President Harris, before you left for your current role in media. How do you go about making these decisions? And I'll speak to some advice that I got one time when I was at Cisco. I always pursued learning. Like, that's what I prioritize.
Yes.
So I talked to a mentor and I was considering a new role within Cisco. I was working in supply chain and they were introducing cloud. I was considering the opportunity and a mentor said, I filter it through get, give, and avoid. And so what do you have to gain from the opportunity? What do you have to give and bring to the opportunity to make sure you're set up for success? And avoid was always kind of lost on me, but it's like you want to avoid toxic workplaces or toxic
drama.
Boss. Yeah, stuff like that.
I love this frame. That's how I've made all my decisions, but I never give and avoid. So now I'm stealing that. Okay. Yes. Everybody knows it was, I'm going to get hat tip. Okay. Is that what they say on the internet? Hat tip.
I'll take credit even though it's my mentor,
well,
Becky
there we
Jacoby
go. Exactly. But through you, living vicariously through you. That's how I've made all my decisions about. I believe you have to know when to go. That's my motto. It's like, sometimes there was a time where you work a job for 30, 40 years. I could not imagine. Okay.
We were talking about that earlier. I mean, it's really our parents' generation.
Yeah.
That was much more the norm. If they jumped around the way we do, I think that it would
be... It's like, this is an unreliable individual.
Exactly. It would be frowned upon. It's very different now.
She's not someone we would like to hire. Too many jobs. Oh, what is this experience?
Liability.
We don't want all that. Liability, okay? Girl could be gone 2 years from now. So I believe you have to know when to go. And every time that I have left a job or a work environment, it has been because, it's just my time. And who can argue with you when you go in to say, I just feel like it's my time. No one can argue your time. What's the rebuttal to that? No, it's not. How you going to tell me about...
disagree.
Okay. Like, how you going to tell me about my time? So it's just my time. But when choosing to take a new opportunity, I do think about it through the give, get, and avoid. And when I left the White House, and I knew for a fact that I wanted to go back into the media space. I was a commentator. I was a political commentator before I went after 2016 and until 2019. And I knew I wanted to go back, but I didn't just want to be a commentator. I wanted the opportunity to host a show. I feel like the media space is very powerful. I enjoy, the conversations being on TV. And I don't care what people say. Everyone's like, oh, linear. That's what they call it in the business, linear. They're talking about television. Linear, they say TV is dying and, streaming is the future. People aren't going to be turning on their televisions. When something happens in the world, you turn on your TV.
Do you know, I actually go to your Instagram. I've been trained to go to your Instagram. Truly, I seek you out because you come with this voice of reason.
Thank you.
And you break things down in a really relatable and understandable way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to know, no one is writing my digital things for me. That is all me.
But that's why I come to you. It's obvious. It's immediate and it's off the cuff and it comes from such an informed place and it's from your years of experience. So you can speak with an understanding that's very different and you add the context that I think we're all looking for.
That's what I want. Thank you. I appreciate you so much because that's what I try to do. It's what I hope I do.
Yes.
And it's what I wanted to do when I left the White House. So I wanted the opportunity to do that. I thought TV was a very powerful space and medium. So was streaming. And I wanted my opportunity. And so as I was thinking about, and also, I'm not even gonna lie, I worked very, very hard for about 3-4 years straight. I did not want to wake up in the middle of the night on a Monday or Tuesday or Saturday and like, oh my goodness, what's happening? My 2 phones ringing and all this anxiety. I did not want that anymore.
Yes.
I lived that life and I was looking for a bit of a soft life, Sally. I wanted a little soft life.
Yes.
I wanted to be able to go to brunch.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to go shopping.
Yeah.
I wanted the things.
Yeah. I also, if you want it, there's a future in comedy because I think that's the other reason that you resonate because it's like, I mean, I honestly, like, I just cry of laughter every time we're together. So I feel like, next career.
You know Roy Wood Jr., the comedian?
No.
He was on The Daily Show for some years. He did the White House Correspondents' Dinner, not this year, but last year.
Oh, yes. No,
He's my cousin.
Yes. No, I know him. I saw him. I saw a live podcast recording and he was there. He's so funny.
He's hilarious. So maybe Roy's my actual cousin, like on my dad's side. So maybe I'd like to say it runs in the family. Roy's going to be like, you are not as funny as me, honey. This is a job. You just got here.
Yeah, it is such a job. It's such a comedy is so hard, but you've got something in there. We are in an election year where the media is constantly being questioned. Facts are up for debate. And as the face of your own show and as its leader, how do you motivate your team and make sure that you're telling the right stories?
So, it's interesting. When I first came to MSNBC, I hosted, they called it an eponymous show, which I didn't know what eponymous, that's one of the things I had to Google. Okay, when I came to MSNBC, eponymous means a show, I guess, named after you. So the show was Symone. I'm like, oh, okay. Just why I can't say a show named after her. I don't know. But when I hosted, so that's what I did for the first 2 years. Now I'm a co-host on the show called The Weekend. And The Weekend is 3 of us. It's myself, Michael Steele, former chair of the RNC, the first Black chair of the RNC, and Alicia Menendez. And so what I love about co-hosting a show with 3 people is, first of all, it's not on any one of us. We sometimes joke that's like, you know what? I don't have anything on this. If I don't want to speak for 2 minutes, I don't have to say a word. I can just speak my eyebrows and all is well. Okay. There's no dead air. Everything, the show moves on. But the other great thing about that is that we each bring various vantage points to our earliest conversation to what is happening in this election cycle. And so when things arise, whether we're talking about, Donald Trump and the legals or debates or just name a topic, okay, the Supreme Court, the vantage points that we all bring to the conversation of real lived work experience, right? It makes a difference. And so when we're speaking, I try to make sure I caveat, from my earlier days, it's like speaking with the data points, it's just like, when I was in the White House, I can talk to you about the security clearance and how Donald Trump would definitely be considered a national security threat because I know for a fact, right? Like I'm not speaking from, what I heard, what I read in a book, maybe what I saw through the window. I am telling you what I know to be true because I was there. Doing the explainer videos is really an answering the questions. I just do a little Q&A on my socials sometimes, on my Instagram stories, because people have real questions and they want to be engaged and involved. And I do think that we have a duty to keep the bar high and substantive and just tell the truth. So yeah, I used to work for the president and vice president, but I will tell you what was happening. What's happening in Gaza is a humanitarian crisis. Okay, and some of the statements that some administration officials were making about a week ago about, oh, we can't verify what's going on in Rafah. That's crazy, and they sound ridiculous. And I said that. So it's just about keep being truthful. And in this election cycle, the people deserve the truth. And I'm grateful that I work at a network that cares about the truth and ensuring that people are just telling people what it is. I want people to make their own decisions at home, but you're not going to say, I didn't try to tell you.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious to know what advice you have for Gen Z entering careers in politics.
I would tell folks to do your research, keep the bar high and substantive. And lastly, know what your personal and professional line is. And not only what your line is, but what you will do if and when you were faced with the moment that someone crosses it.
Person of the week?
This week?
Who are you currently obsessed with and why?
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with Patina Miller. I saw her again. She performed at the Juneteenth concert that I was just recently at the White House. I saw her perform at Arena Stage recently. Patina Miller is just one letter short of an EGOT, honey. She is amazing. Right now, she is the I interviewed her for my eponymous show. But she's amazing. Folks might remember her from as she played the witch on Into the Woods on Broadway. But right now she plays the mom in Raising Kanan on Raising Kanan. It's on Stars. But Patina Miller is amazing. Her voice is crazy. And she's from South Carolina. You know, I love a good South Carolinian. But on TV, the show she's on is based in New York. She has a thick New York accent. I love Patina Miller. She's like my country cousin at this point. I told her when I saw her yesterday, I said, we are officially cousins because I've seen you so many times.
We have an audience question. Okay, this is from Beth in Virginia. I have been at my current company for close to 14 years now. When I was hired, it was a startup in a garage, and now we are about 50 plus people. I have had multiple promotions, but over the past 12 months, my team has not been leveraging me as much. I have had many honest conversations with the CEO, and it does not seem to be because of my ability or skill set, but instead the constant changes within the organization. The shift is creating more of a gap for where I'd like to work and grow professionally. After investing so much of yourself into one company, what advice or guidance do you have for helping someone move on to a new opportunity?
As we just discussed, Beth, I admire you for the dedication. But I mean, a startup is no small task, right? And to still be there at 50 folks, that is like kudos to the work. I would say two things. First, I would note, and I think this also goes back to maybe some of the advice I would give folks going into not just politics, but I think this is across the board, especially in business. Don't just be a problem pointer outer. I think the best people are problem solvers. Like, what is my second pet peeve at work? My worst thing? My worst pet peeve is someone that's just always telling you everything that's wrong. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Do you have a solution? Or furthermore, how are you going to fix it? Okay. I like to fashion myself as a problem fixer. Okay. That's my problem. Okay. That's my issue sometimes. Okay. At home, my husband's like, I'm not telling you so you can fix it. I'm just telling you. Okay. Well, sorry, sir. I'm just trying to get to the heart of the matter here and you know, address it and move on. But I think that if there are gaps and there's things that we want to do and go do, why have we attempted to try to do them in the workspace and place, right? Have we not just said, oh, I want these tasks? Have we gone out and just taken them and done them and just do them? Because I am just a firm believer that people aren't just going to pick you, especially when it comes to women, when it comes to women of color. They just might not pick you. You could be the best, the strongest, the smartest, like they still might not pick you for whatever reason. And so we have to create lanes and like pick ourselves even within our workspace in place. And so before, it sounds like this is a company, Beth, that you love, honey. Okay, you love this company and I don't think you really want to go, but you do want to grow. And if that's the case, I would just caution, Beth, perhaps maybe you need to circle on, in the words of my good friend Jen Psaki, maybe you might want to circle back and you see where the gap is. You know where you want to go. Have you had the conversation about these are the things that I can do and I would like to blah, 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 blah. Not waiting on someone to bestow something on you or just say, you know, oh, I saw that this issue, da-da-da. So I want you to know I put together this, like, just go do it. Don't wait for somebody to give you permission to go do it. Sometimes I think we need to craft the thing for the people because they just might not be thinking about us. And that's fine. If Beth wants to stay at the company, I think, Beth, circle on back. Go in there with your proposal about what you've already executed. Don't give the people too much paper now. I want them to steal your idea. And then after that, if you really feel like this is not the space and place for you, you got to know when to go. But my mother always told me, do not leave your job without having another one.
Well, okay, I have some counter advice on that one.
What do you have? Yeah. You think just go?
No, I don't. I think the startup, like early stage and mid-level where they are 50 plus people, those are different companies. And your CEO is not going to have the bandwidth. So I agree with that, like putting something together internally in terms of your dream job. Stretch goals, whatever it is, like create a position for yourself. And if it sticks and pans out, great. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, I'd be parallel pathing an exit. I think that what happens as you move into your 30s, so she's been there 14 years. I got to assume she's in her mid-30s.
Mid-30s, yeah.
and this is her only job. So I think that around then is when we start to grab onto some power and recognize that we're assets. And so we look at jobs differently and we assess it through the lens of like, what does it do for me, or what am I learning, or where am I growing? And I bring a lot of value. So I think that just assessing like what it is that you want out of your next role and being pretty clear about it, and understanding that the experience you've had at a startup is a unique one.
That's such a good point, Sally, because it's not the same company. I would say, what does Beth want?
Yes.
You have to know what you want and then ask for what you want and what you believe you have worked for.
And do you know what this is the piece that my brother, so I graduated from college in 2007. I don't know if you remember the collapse of the financial institutions, but I certainly do. And that's when I was entering my career in finance and banking.
That's crazy. I was a freshman in college in 2008. So it was bleak. And by the time I graduated, everybody was like, we are still recovering.
It was bleak. It was honestly the best time to get paid nothing. I mean, I got paid like $30-something thousand. And so I was easy to keep employed. And I was learning so much. But I remember looking for that first job for like 6 months and being so stressed out about it. And what my brother said is, there are so many jobs in the world. They're not going anywhere. Don't beat yourself up about it. It's going to happen. It's an inevitability. And so don't put too much pressure on yourself. Yes, I think it's a privilege to quit a job without another job. But I also think that you have so much value, and like bet on yourself, you know?
Well, and hopefully Beth has bet on her bank account. And it sounds like Beth is strategic and she got some savings. So Beth, go to Bali and figure it out. Send some emails. Let us know. I'm invested in this. Okay.
I hope we get updates. I know I agree.
Beth, send updates, please.
Find us. Symone, thank you. This has been so fun. I knew that it would be, but I could really just spend all the time in the world with you. You are a joy. Thanks for listening to Work Friends, a podcast from Argent. Listen and follow on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Argent YouTube channel for more clips and bonus content. Plus, email your work questions and dilemmas at workfriends@argentwork.com for a chance to have one of our amazing guests weigh in with advice. To see more of Symone, tune into The Weekend, Saturdays and Sundays from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on MSNBC, co-hosted by Symone Sanders-Townsend, Alicia Menendez, and Michael Steele. And if you're in New York, you can see Symone in person at MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, an inaugural audience-focused event featuring more than a dozen of the most well-known MSNBC hosts and more. The day-long event takes place on Saturday, September 7th at BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music in Brooklyn, New York. Tickets are available at msnbc.com/democracy 2024. I'm Sally Christensen, and we'll see you next time.
Work Friends.
Work Friends is produced by Gina Marinelli and Chris Allen with editing by Justin Kropp. Our theme music is by Karina De Piano and Melanie Naima.